Malcolm X. Joining us, we have his eldest daughter, Sister Attallah Shabazz. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
How you doing?
Good.
Welcome to Pull Your Coat.
Thank you.
Sister Shabazz, you grew up in the midst of Malcolm X, Hajj Malik Al Shabazz, as his oldest daughter and the life. Share with us in brief just a little bit about who he was.
First of all, I grew up in the midst of Daddy. It's as simple as that. It's as basic as that. It's as regular as that. And each one of us have a parent or two, if we're fortunate, that goes to work and does something. And for me, who and what both of my parents represented was a part of my normal rearing. And so on the simple side, it's Daddy that I think of, even when I see a photograph out. It's not always Malcolm X unless I hear it being interpreted, him being interpreted through someone else. So growing up with a father who was a buddy kind of cat kind of dude, a realist, a person who spoke to you in a way that you would understand best, a listener. And I was fortunate, I realized as I grew up, because not everyone had that kind of correspondence with the father, even if he was present. My parents, even though they were busy, were very hands-on parents. And as God or life's path would have it, my family would not be fortunate enough to live together due to tragedy. But being firstborn, I realized how important it is in terms of what you invest when you can. Because for me, it has a sustenance of an everlasting sense of family. I have to remember that my mother is a single parent. That's a detail I have to recall, because my birth order gives me two parents. And because of the kind of father my father was, I have to remember that he's not here.
What was it like for you as a child growing up, not having your father?
Certainly a great absence. There was a rhythm started, as I stated earlier, that gave him such a presence even while traveling, where my mother was indeed the metronome, the balancer, the enforcer in that house. And we were fortunate enough to always have an extended family within the Islamic community and surrounding it, a global family, a family with accents and cultures, so that there was a continuum based on the kind of world he started for us. So growing up as my father's daughter was healthy for me, but I realized the greater world around me was functioning with a deficit, and I knew it was a deficit of information, so I was very seldom offended by ignorant statements coming from a black mouth or a white mouth. I knew it came from just not getting it, and I think that's why it's really important that we communicate with people that are close to us, that you convey what you feel, because you don't know the time span in which you're going to have to convey everything. Moreover, in my situation, having a public family, you don't know when and what atmosphere as a teenager, due to peer pressure or challenges or the parents of your friends who don't want you to be too close to that revolutionary's kid, just in case it rubs off, like cooties or something. As if there wasn't enough going on to inspire them to want to do something. I have a great comfort. And so growing up as my father's daughter on the daddy side, the textures of a human being that I know all so well, that by the time the film came out and the comfort levels of exploring Malcolm became commonplace, and someone would say to me, "You must be really proud now." And you want to say, "Well, I've been proud." If I had waited to 1992 to get proud, that'd been long overdue, And when people say to me, meaning well, "Boy, your father sure had changed," you want to say, no, it's not a new speech. This is anything you pick or pull from a documentation now. It couldn't have been said after February 21st, 1965. So that if we're finding new information by 1992 to 1996 about a person that shapes your perception of him differently, we have to ask what happened in that 28-year period that edited that. And if it's happened about one human being, it could actually be so about most of the people we learn about per the telling of someone else. And so we have to be much more fair, less judgmental, read between the lines about any culture, about any headline, know that there's another side. And that with 300 words, somebody's giving you 30, you know, to shape your mindset. And you can listen to the 30, but you have to do your research for the other 270 words.
When people meet you, do they expect you to be your father, or, you know, are they surprised sometimes, you know, in meeting you?
Maybe they expect me to be who they think my father is. Yeah, I probably come across that, you know, glasses, a mustache or something. Depending on who they think my father is, I'm sure that that is how they approach me. I think in the last number of years, that has broadened. You know, people aren't as afraid of me, or they don't think I'm going to attack them, or something like that. Because indeed, there was a time, black folks too, that thought anger is what inspired my father, as opposed to love of culture, love of self, love of you, even though we didn't know you, and to understand the inspiration and the motivation that would have someone make choices that would result in not tending to his family on a given night because someone else is calling 911. You know, meaning 911 figuratively speaking, the house, can you assist us? And my father was raised amongst his brothers and sisters as a child of the Garvey movement, so that the first decade of his life, before his own household broke down, was about public service. It was about self-love. It was about cultural awareness, and it preceded slavery, so it wasn't a post-slavery organization. It wasn't even really an organization about repairing. It's about information. That if you knew yourself, that slavery in the Western Hemisphere is a fact, but let's put some more facts on the table so that you can balance these facts. And the one that doesn't work for you real good right now, you can start to diminish, set aside, and the part of you that feels significant or royal or steadfast, you can claim that as well. It's not just a notion. So I am a Garvey grandchild as a result of the investment in my father's early childhood before his family fell apart and he was in the streets and on a quest to grow up. And on my mother's side, we're descendants of the philosophies of Booker T. Washington. You know, so aware black people in this country, you know, it's 4, 5, 6 generations. It's not a new thing. It's not an awakening. The 60s didn't start it. You know, it's that the 60s just makes it contemporary.
Okay. Your father was feared by many and loved by, you know, others as well, too. You know, it seems as if the mythology of this country, the people's attitudes, particularly with your father and his relationship with Muhammad Ali, established, you know, now it seems that they want to embrace him more, just as they do with Muhammad Ali. Why is that such a attitude that we take, you know, with leaders like them?
I don't understand the question.
In regards to, like, it seems as if now he's dead, it's easier for us to accept him. And since the 30-plus years of Muhammad Ali's resistance to go in the army, it's easy for us to embrace what he stood for. You know, our country seems as time, you know, wants to accept into these things, but once they're going through those movement and revolutionary stance, they don't want to accept that.
I think there are a number of factors. You know, the 60s was much more turbulent, and you had to watch what you said in any forum. In any forum. You couldn't speak up, out, or against. There was a club membership, you know, that you had to participate in. Even in what considered itself liberal, you had to still prescribe to the liberal tenets of an organization. So in itself, it would be limiting. I think now times are broader. We have heard a lot said. We have had to lick many wounds in the last 30 years. You have more cultural and social uprisings, the rights of all kinds of people. We are mistaken if we think that we can't even use the term white as mainstream anymore. That even, as I was sharing with someone earlier, that in a white family reunion, there's going to be some colored folks in it. The world is much more blended. You know, at a Christian family reunion, there are going to be some Jews and Muslims and some Hindus. The world in the United States is much more blended. And anytime we talk about maintaining any one particular thought process, we're fooling ourselves. So when you talk about the openness to embrace Muhammad Ali or my father, I think it comes as a result of having more types of listeners. You know, in one's family, you now have to be broader. Because as you love your grandchild is now a blend. So you are exercising a part of your heart you didn't know existed, and you have to. You have to now sit, I'm from New York, so the difference between being in Los Angeles and New York is that you sit next to somebody different on the subway all day long. You have to share that hanger that you're holding on to, or that pole. When that subway jerks, all arms are going to embrace and assist someone from standing up. Well, using the subway as an example of us getting from point A to point B, we have to coexist like that. It doesn't mean that I lose any part of myself because I've shared or opened up. I think I've become broader, larger, bigger, clearer. And if I can find the part in me and you that is the medium point, then I can use that to convey my feelings as opposed to just talk at you. And I think it's great as 30 years has passed, we've publicly watched Ali grow up, contribute, stand for something at 22 years old. We don't see enough of that footage of Ali, who he had faith in at 22 years old. And that to him, take the belt, take the title. What is more important is my convictions as it relates to my spiritual self and that I'm anti-war. That's not being anti-patriotic. It's having a conviction. And so you have more baby boomers now who were youngsters then who are now executives. And they are in control of the voice.
Speaking about revolutionaries, and do we need more revolutionaries now? Recently, we were just talking earlier about Mahmoud Abdul Rauf and his not willingness to stand up for the flag. We're seeing entertainers, athletes, quickly just to sell for the quick buck. Do we need more people who are willing to stand up for their beliefs and rights right now?
I think it would be great if we were permitted to have the freedom to believe in whatever we desire to believe in and follow it, as long as it doesn't invade or rob the next person. I think the word revolutionary is a frightening and intimidating term, but it simply means change. If you have a sense of who you are and you like it and you're comfortable with it, very little can really invade that. And if you respect yourself enough, you wouldn't try to impose yourself on another. You would learn to respect another person. So I would hope, not using the word revolutionary, because coming out of my mouth, it could take on so many different intonations from the listener, not implied by me, but by the listener. I would encourage people to learn themselves, know themselves, like themselves, even within a family, because we can be very different than our siblings, very different than our parents want us to turn out. But somehow or another, you are as per God's plan. If you know that, then how you proceed, if it's honorable, then people will listen. I think people are apt to listen. It's just when you knock them over the head, nobody wants to hear that.
Where have we come as a society, particularly as you travel around the country and throughout the world and see some of the pressing issues that are affecting us as a people?
Be more specific.
In regards to the issues that you see that Muslim women and women just across the globe are facing, the oppression and the rights and discrimination that they face.
Women?
The women I'm speaking, yeah.
Well, it's broad. I mean, I come from a line of women who are strong women. Their strength did not minimize their vulnerabilities. There were men who were supportive of husbands, but who also wanted to be soft at the same time. I think we are confused in this society, men and women both, about role playing, and that even a man who has hair on his chest doesn't know that he's allowed to shed a tear. We have to permit people to feel from the inside out. And so I think that women cannot be who they are all by themselves. I mean, I come from a family of women, a mother and 5 younger sisters. I long for a man's perspective in there, the buddyship, the partnership of males. I have brother-in-laws galore who, when a sister says, is in debate, I actually hear his side. You know, so we have to allow for the balance. And when women in this day and age who are striving to be strong and independent and noted, singularly independent of being in this man's world, we often find ourselves saying, I can do without him. But do you really want to? Isn't companionship a welcoming thing? Why in finding our own strength do we have to separate ourselves from the other part? And I don't just mean in romance, I mean in relationships, in the balance of co-respondence. And so in the dilemma of what I find for women, I don't know if your question is specific or general.
Just general.
General, I think women need to know their strength. You know, women, without saying anything, are the magic wand in a circumstance, in a situation. I think we have been bestowed the powers and the strengths that soothe the savage beast. And so you don't have to be loud, you don't have to be retaliatory. All you have to do is think and see it, feel it, send it telepathically. As bearers, as nurturers. My father was a very, very strong man, but I know that the metronome in my house is what enabled him the ease. I know that when people note that or state that Muslim wives walk behind their men, if my mother was behind my father, she was checking his hem. You know, and he knew it. And he looked back to make sure, is it okay? I watched a man and a woman romance and support one another. So for me, I'm a romanticist about the correlation between human relationships. It's all I know. And it doesn't preclude the fact that I also watch tragedy amongst men in my family. But because the best of it came from two people I knew first, I would love for my mother not to feel alone and that she had to be a strong woman. Wouldn't it be great if we in this world didn't feel as if we had to take gender sides and make gender explanations, thus robbing ourselves of the range of emotions that we have in the strength of us and in the weakness of us. And it's a tough thing that if you're known for being strong, that you're robbed of the right to be vulnerable.
Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessing be upon him, said that women are twin halves of men. Your mother, again, just really just in sharing, you know, the strength and the compassion that she had, you know, the whole situation in life right now. How is she doing? And, you know, just tell us some
My
things.
mother's doing fine.
She's doing great.
Yeah, you know, she's a mother and grandmother, trying to act like she's not. Changes the word, can't be called grandma. But she's doing fine. Life has been tough to, not just as a single parent, but with a single parent with dreams for her children in the absence of her husband dead, who yet is ever present. A woman who did not permit herself to be reaccompanied because of her dedication and her oath, her marital oath to a husband who was not going to be present. I find that amongst many women, and it's a sad thing because society puts it on you too, you know, that you don't let anybody up in there. But this is a woman who was 30 when widowed and alone and bearing children. I, as a daughter, woman, person, observer, would love for someone to send her some flowers. Because my father was a courter. My father was a rapping dude, you know, and when you've been courted and romanced and charmed by your you know, knight in shining armor, and then it's gone, and then publicly it's blasphemous to desire again. Instead, we would rather you be the martyr. And that's the issue, I think, for a lot of women who are in whatever the challenges that there are in their life, to front strong all the time. And so for my mother, who has the greatest grin in the world, I'm always hoping to find something that kind of fuels that grin. You know, and sometimes after some 31 years of not embracing her husband, all you have to do is recap the story from back then, and she can have a stern face, and then if you say, well, you know, my husband, and you imitate her or something, or you talk about, hey girl, the way he used to talk to her, she just falls apart. So, but what's unfortunate is that I have to reach back to re-inject that sweetness in her heart, and we have to make sure that we always are embracing one another and not putting someone in a position to have to live up to the martyrdom. It's not humanly fair.
How are your sisters doing? And
Fine.
how's the family?
Everybody's doing
Everybody
good, growing
okay?
up. You know, I get a couple collect calls every now and then as the older sister. You know,
Okay.
so.
All right. Well, what are some of the things that you're doing? Share with us, you know, you started Nucleus Inc. and also Prism International. Share with us some of the things you're doing.
Nucleus Incorporated is a national touring company of educational theater founded by initially Yolanda King and myself. And Yolanda King is the eldest daughter of Dr. Martin Luther King. And we met in 1979, and as a result of being asked to do a lecture to urban high schools, we decided that it would be a little too stark to just stand at a podium. So we put together an assembly piece, which turned into a theatrical piece that incorporated all of the social issues without standing at a podium. And it enabled us to become 14. So we brought on, you know, other friends and colleagues, and within 3 years, we were averaging 40 cities, and within the next, you know, within 5 years, we were averaging 60 cities around the country, and we're now 16 years old. So, you know, we got old trying to act like we were 14, you know.
Yeah.
But it was a nice thing. The word of mouth, we realized how simple and as organic as the piece was that we pulled together. And there were always people in the audience, young and old, who felt like we were talking about them. And we realized it did not have to be a masterpiece. It didn't have to be an opera. We just had to talk to the heart and to the nature of existence. And by now, I walk around, and the people we first started talking to are adults, you know, who remind me that we were at their school. So, of course, I feel older. But it's a nice thing to know that even from a stage, that you're not just giving rhetoric, but you're embracing a heart. And so that's what Nucleus Incorporated is. Prism International, I myself am a cultural enthusiast, an internationalist. You know, I love languages, peoples, origins, and I started to realize, especially since I was raised in that kind of atmosphere, one foot in America, one out, you know, looking around, wanting to participate. What is it that I can do as a creator, developer, producer, director, dreamer, to unite cultures, and whichever the medium was, whether it was a tour, whether it was a production, conversations, a round table, something light, something easy that enables people in its atmosphere to digest the information. I know Jews who are Hasidic. I understand it because they are maintaining a culture within a culture. So thus I respect it, and they're kosher just like I am. So you find things so that while people think there's a war between Muslims and Jews, or blacks and Jews, you find things that are very similar, and you say, I get it, you know, and so on. And that is what Prism International is, as well as Tapestry Bridge. Those are all companies that enable me and or collaborators to funnel information or product that kind of expands, you know, the learning experience about cultures. Because it's easy for me to tell you about somebody and you buy it if you don't have any idea or insight about the range.
And again, that richness of being able to study and research and bring about the culturalization that we should have as a people, what becomes the state of our community, I'm talking about generally, for us to learn about each other more, to break down the barriers, and is the state of the family in such a crisis as what we see on the news?
Ask me that again. There's me two
Yeah,
questions.
it was kind of two. But just in terms of the state of the family, basically, does it seem that it's in such a crisis if we seem to want to stay on each other's side of the tracks and don't want to try to work together and bridge a lot of the culture?
I think there are a lot of things that contribute to today's present state of the family despondency. So it's not just the 14-year-old kid, it's that 28-year-old mother. You know, it's that 40-year-old grandmother. It's that 56-year-old great-grandmother. Now, to be 56 to me is still young. That means that somewhere in the 60s and 70s we weren't taking care of something. She wasn't hugged or he wasn't hugged then. It takes nothing for the third generation nowadays, for the 12 and 13-year-old who's running around in the street, to feel despondent when 3 generations already in that family, the heart has been broken. So I think that I come from a family where my grandmother, who all of the Shabazz girls outgrew in height on my mother's side, because she's 5'2", but she still today, when she calls, is grandma. So that I think that there has to be some kind of real effort put towards self-love across the board, all communities, not just the urban community, because I tell you one thing, one misses the so-called childhood privilege in the nurturing process because you think they can afford it, they can go to therapy, but they're missing it. There's a hug that's missing in this country. There's an overall embrace that's missing in this country. So when it's not about the dollar, the hug is not about the dollar, because before 2 generations, black folks didn't have any money, but you had a hug. You had a minister, you had a grandparent, you know, you had a mentor, there was the police officer, there was somebody, and you didn't have a dime. So we cannot solely put our repair, our soul's repair, on the economic situation in a community. If you have some, tea bags, and the other one has some bottled water, and the other one has some corn kernels, we can get around and watch a movie tonight. That's what was happening, taking care of a village, taking care of one another in New York, which I don't do here. But you talk to that lady over there whose child is walking over there. Excuse me, miss, because that child is like your niece or your nephew. And you do have that tone like of your finger going like that, because there's a community effort in how you rebuild and how you embrace and how you hug. You know, people see me, and if I'm not there a while, they say, how you doing, sister? How's your daughter? How's your mother? It happens automatically. You know, whether they're coming out of a stupor, whether they're pulling their head out of a book. You need to make sure that our family, each one teach one, reach one, whatever the poems are that have been said, we need to really do it, you know, in terms of the family despondency. In an urban family, in a low-income family, in a middle-class family, and in an upper-middle-class family. A spirit is a spirit, and money doesn't have anything to do with it.
Alhamdulillah. Sister Shabazz, it was a very pleasure having you come on, and please come again.
Actually,
again, thank you, our community, for tuning in to this segment tonight. As always, we want to thank you, our viewers, for continuing to write and call us and let us know how we're doing. And again, if you want to be a program, get a chance to call us. Again, let us know what's going on. We run out of time at this time.